Hello, everyone. Welcome and thanks for joining. My name is Gilles Hendrikx, and I'm product manager at Logic Technology. We help engineers to create great products and lower their development risk. We do this with a wide variety of tools and hardware. But before we start, I would like to kindly ask you to keep your mic muted and your camera turned off to save some bandwidth. Please feel free to type any questions you have in the chat box, and we will do our best to answer them at the end of the session. Thanks. Today, we would like to share some of the challenges that our customers have faced when they develop their UI product. With me today from Crank Software is Garry Clarkson.
Good morning, good afternoon, all. Thank you for that, Gilles. Excited to talk to you today. We're going to be going through some scenarios. We're going to be talking about some of the background of some of the features that Storyboard has, and we'll be looking to take you through the process and the steps that we engage with our customers. So I think Gilles, do you want to take it from the next slide here?
Yeah, sure. Like we said, the last couple of years we have worked together with customers in many different markets, and some of the challenges that we see are very common and happen often. First of all, user experience is key. Customers are so used to smartphones and the smooth look and feel these high-end devices deliver that this has become the norm for all UI products. With evolving products and growing feature set, this might lead to upgrading your hardware sooner than you anticipated at the start. A different hardware challenge is that within a product family or a product ecosystem, a wide variety of hardware is being used, which is often developed by the same R&D team. Within these R&D teams, product development happens on different levels at the same time. Graphic designers and marketing are working on the look of the UI. UI UX specialists are figuring out how everything should feel. And of course, hardware and software engineers are making sure everything works accordingly. So Garry, can you please tell us more about how these challenges have affected some of the projects we did?
Sure. So Gilles and I we've worked on quite a few customer projects together. Throughout all of these engagements, we see there's quite a few common themes. And let's remember that Storyboard and designing UIs in particular is actually really difficult. So Storyboard is here to make that easy. So some of the common challenges we find are consider as a company who's manufacturing a range of products. So these could be from something which is maybe a vending machine at an entry level, a mid-range, and perhaps something high-end. These may all have different hardware inside, and we've got several customers we work with who have exactly this challenge. So they need a platform, they need an approach, a solution which allows them to scale from maybe an MCU platform up to an MPU or application processor platform. And they may also have different sizes of screens to add into that mix. So the challenge of dealing with quite a broad product range in terms of SKUs and product units is a big challenge. So that's very common. When you mix in that challenge with something involving maybe white labeling their products for other customers, you've got to add in branding. So branding will change and be personalized for each individual customer, different color schemes, maybe different layouts. Add on top of that, you've got the extra challenge of perhaps different languages. So you've got these multiple screen sizes, multiple languages, multiple branding and color schemes, and you can quickly see how real product development starts to get exponentially more difficult. So we've built in tools and techniques within our Storyboard product, which I'll go through in a moment. We're looking at some of the ways that you use the tools and approach these challenges. So I think one of the customer engagements we had literally is, how do you start? Where do you start with something like this? So one customer in particular was using a PDF, a document basically as a starting point, and everything had to be pretty much handcrafted. It's it's one of those things where you have to start from zero, and then you're going to be using programming skills to kind of create handcraft pixel by pixel that user interface. So we think that's a really bad way to do things, and we've got solutions that help you through that. So
especially the translation between the ID that's written on paper, the design somebody thought out, and then translated pixel by pixel to a final product is something that will generally lead to a compromised UI.
That's exactly right. Yeah. It's at the end of the day, some things are just too hard to try and describe in code, and so I've got a graphic coming up which kind of aims to describe that. So I think Gilles and I have often seen this come up, and Gilles, you want to say something?
No, please feel free to show the graph. I think it shows it covers the load.
Sure. So sorry, we like to call this the workflow. So that what I've described really was the traditional way of doing things. So this is where you create a design on paper or in some other tool, and you need to visualize or create that. And this often takes code. So what you end up having is a situation where every design change is a code change, even moving a pixel or so either way, or changing a piece of text on the screen. And so this process binds the designers, the UI team, together with the software team. And it goes on and on and on, and as we've seen many times, this takes much longer than was originally planned, and also means that by the time you got to the end, there are inevitable compromises. So some things were too hard, and so we've got a Go ahead, Jess.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, how exactly do you solve this?
So we've got an approach which kind of splits apart that into parallel workflows, and so the whole aim here really is to allow the design team and the development team to work in parallel, and so our tool is designed to be used by both software engineers and designers, and we firmly believe that the designers, the ones with the eye for detail, should be the guys who are doing the bulk of the user interface design. And so what can happen is that these guys are building things in the tool of their choice, and this may be something like Photoshop or Sketch or some other tools, in Illustrator, for example. And those are what they work in. Those are their productivity tools. So for us, being able to bring those designs in from those environments as the designer intended, without having to handcraft this with the software guys, this really enables the design to accelerate way faster. In our case, we've seen this in lots of situations with customers where they're literally unlocked, so they're able to do lots and lots more things and more iterations in their design than they've ever been able to before.
Okay. So can you show us how this works in practice?
Yeah. So companies who've done this, they've been able to kind of really fast track their development. So what I'll do now is I want to quickly show you a typical workflow. So if I switch over to my design phase, so picture the scene. A new product has been in marketing in the design team for some time. They've got a first stage of prototypes. So here is something that has been created in this is Photoshop, for those who've not seen this before. So this is a design for a wall thermostat, for example, in Photoshop. The way that a graphic designer would approach this is very similar to the way that we present it in Storyboard. I'm not a designer. I'm a software guy, but this is my entire limit of my skills in Photoshop. So bear with me. So a screen here, such as the climate screen. This is using something called a artboard. So each of these screens is an artboard. So we have I think 4 screens in total here. I'll get that back again. So let me just zip that. Center it again. So the first screen here is the climate screen. And if I bring out the layers, you can see here on the climate screen, if I hide some of them, in fact, I'll do all of them. So the way that they would build up a design would be kind of from a background layer upwards. So we've got a background image, and on top of that, you can see there's some commonality, some common menu layer. So this will be the navigation flow, maybe some status information top and bottom, and then basically the center element, the center aspect of the screen is where the content changes. So they've been through and they've created all of these images and in nice look and feel in Photoshop. And at this point, this is ready for the design team to hand over to to put into an environment where they want to start bringing it to life. So adding that dynamic behavior. So the way we do that in Storyboard, for example. And this is our storyboard tool. This is the latest Storyboard 7, which is released just this week. We have the ability to take that Photoshop design and bring it in and recreate it pixel perfect within Storyboard. So we've got an import wizard here. I should say we've got one for Sketch as well, but Sketch is only available on an Apple, an iOS or Mac environment. So you would be able to do this with Sketch as well. So what I'll do is I'll select the PSD file. So you don't actually have to have Photoshop to do this. We understand the file format. We break it apart and deconstruct it and withdraw all the assets from it. So for example, this scenario might be that you're working with an external design agency and they've been creating this initial prototype for some time, and they've sent it to you in an email, just the PSD file. What we're going to do now is create a new project based on that file. So we're going to hit it and create a new project. This is going to deconstruct that application, recreate those screens inside of Storyboard. So you can see here, if I zoom out slightly, we've got those screens recreated, and they are exactly as they were in Photoshop. You see here from a model view, we've got each screen and the climate screen we saw earlier. We've got the same layering, so this layer stack up. So the background layer, on the top of that, we have the menu layer and then the center section. So all of those features have been recreated, and if I click on the images here, you'll see that individual icons have been extracted from that Photoshop model, and everything's done automatically for you. For example, if I look here, the text in the middle has been brought in as text. It has its font, it has its point size, its position, and even the text is brought in as text. So what you see is what you get. I can change that there. So that's really a very, very fast way of doing things. If you have the assets and the capability and design created in this kind of Photoshop or Sketch environment so far, it's really quick. You don't have to do it like that. You can still drag your images into the project, drop them in there if you have a whole set of assets and icons already, and you can even create the individual elements. You can create a new screen and drag on fills and circles and everything else. So you can build up things interactively as well. So we have our design in here. I want to quickly add something. I won't do very much of this. I'll just explain how Storyboard works really. So you see the icon. That has basically the region around it, the control. I can add an action to that control. And in this case, I'm going to do a touch. And our touch is going to do a screen fade. And I'm going to fade to the climate screen, for example. OK, and if I do the same for the security, I'll add an action. You see there's lots of actions I could trigger on a press or release, or even gestures, rotates, pinches, that sort of stuff. But we'll keep it simple. So I'll do a touch. A touch is a press and release on the same control. OK, and in this case, we're going to go to the security screen. OK, so you notice here that I'm not writing any code. This is basically something that we encourage the design team to do. And if I save that now, what we can do is simulate that. So this is going to take this application and run it on our Storyboard engine. And so let's come up over here. So we've now got the screen come up. Some of the behaviors are already been imported, for example. Plus and minus have got the press and release actions tied to image changes. So to give the kind of press. We don't have widgets. We have the the ability to create any controls you like. And we've got a screen transition there between the first and the last screen. So I'm not going to go through and do much more of that. That's really an idea of how you get up and running quickly, and it's very fast to take up a design and start adding these behaviors to it. So here's one that I've already created, and I've done some more work to it, and I'll give you a quick demo before I move on. Okay, so basically it's the same, and I've spent maybe another 15 minutes going through it. So I open it again. The application. I've actually jumped ahead a little bit, so I'll go back to the first one. So the application was in its original form as presented in the Photoshop environment. So what I wanted to show you now is something that's kind of unique to Storyboard, and this is the ability to iterate in terms of the design or reskinning. And I know Gilles and I have worked with quite a few customers who have this challenge, and this is what I referred to before as the branding challenge. Or it could even be something as simple as a day mode and a night mode, so a high contrast or a low contrast. So what you want to do is preserve all of your work effort and reskin it or replace the user interface. So this really saves a huge amount of time if you're dealing with multiple customer brandings. And what I can do, if I flick back to Photoshop, you saw a sneak preview just before. So I've got another version, another PSD file of this application, and the designers have gone through and changed some of the aspects. So this could typically be as a result of the first run through with a customer of a prototype based on the images. They've maybe taken it to a customer experience panel and got some feedback and some recommendations. Maybe use case analysis has said that actually people prefer things to be red or green versus strange white. You get the idea. So this could even be just adding a new logo or creating it for a new customer. So here's our new application. What we want to do is reskin our existing one with that new application skin, and not have to replace any of our existing kind of behaviors. So what I can do is I can take that new design. Remember we were using the import before. We're going to do a re-import now. So I'm going to take that design, reapply it, or map it onto my existing application. And you should see the images being replaced with the new ones. So obviously, one of the things that has to happen at this point is like you would with code, you need to kind of do a sanity check, a preview, and this is very useful for selectively bringing in new features. But I can go through all of those changes and see what the old one was and the new one. So one of the big changes, the background layer has obviously changed. So we've got a new content for the background layer. If I check out some of the icons here, you can see that the thermostat temperature icon has changed. You can see lots of different icon changes. So you can go through and selectively pick up each of those changes. I'm going to select them all and bring those in. You can see now that those images and assets have been mapped over the existing ones, and now that we can run that application, we've preserved all of the work we've done. We've just replaced the images, so the look and feel is preserved, and it's saving you hours and hours and hours of effort. Okay, so I'll show you the one I did before. So this is a little bit more full featured. I've gone through and added some behaviors on there just to give you a bit of an idea. I'm not going to go into that much more detail because we'd like to maybe invite you to come and speak to us in more detail afterwards, but we'll get to that at the end. Okay, so if I'm show you a quick preview, I've added some behaviors in here. I'll show you tiny bit of Lua script, so there's some logic to increment the number there. We've got some fading and some animation between the screens. And this is all done without actually writing code. And the only little bit of scripts I added here for doing that logic and limiting the temperature value and increasing and decreasing. You can see here, this is the way that we address elements on the screen. We're setting a value on this temperature component here. You see we've got a binding here for text. That allows us to change things dynamically. So like I say, if you want to know more, we can maybe continue discussion offline, and I'd encourage you to come speak to us about that. But hopefully you can see that we've addressed some of the challenges. What I haven't shown you is maybe taking all of these texts and translating it, which is a next step. We have a tool built in here. If I go back to the top level of the application, not only we got translation, one of the common things we had before was let's deal with resizing the screen. So we might have a different size screen. We've got an engine here that allows you to resize it and scale it automatically for you. So like we did with reskinning it, we allow customers who are doing this entry level, mid range, high end type of project development to take their designs and scale them up and scale them down automatically. So that's something that really helps in that scenario. So we got our resize tool. Yeah, Gilles, I mean that's pretty much what we like for our parallel workflow, and it shows you how easy it is without resorting to that much code, if any.
Well, everything you've shown us so far is front end UI. How does this translate to back end logic?
That's a very interesting question. It's a one that we always get asked. So what we've done, as you can see, the tool is a UI tool. We call that the front end. So this is the front end where the UI is running. In Storyboard, that runs on a runtime engine, and the engine is a separate process. So if you're on Linux, this is running independently of anything else. Now, a lot of the software development on a product is specifically about the back end. So the back end in this case is something that does something. So the state machine, the thing that controls the machine, that maybe spins the motors, turns the fans or the pumps on and off. So whatever it is that you need to do. So that's all what we call backend. And in between the two, we've got this mechanism to send and receive events. So the state machine's running and it can notify the user interface for any additional data that it needs to display, or state changes, warning messages, anything else that happens. And similarly, the UI can collect user presses and decide that that's something it needs to notify the backend for, so it can send an event backwards. So this is something called Storyboard IO, and this is a mechanism, an inter-process communication mechanism within our architecture, which allows you to basically separate the front and the back end by this message queues. And that allows you, for example, and this is very popular with a lot of people, is developing and testing on the desktop and then deploying it by literally copying it to the target. So we don't generate code, we generate a model and a model view controller. And that allows you to really test things on the desktop environment, do the translation, do the scaling up, the scaling down, do all the user experience with the designers tightly involved in that, and then deploy often and easily to the target to see what it actually looks like when you're using a real thing. And you can constantly refine and iterate and do this without much lag. So you're not doing cross compilation, you're not building, you're not generating C or C++. So the whole thing is really dramatically faster, and the whole aim really is to unlock this serial design. Every change is a code change, every pixel change is a code change, and really break them apart and unlock that. So that's our Storyboard IO API, and it's pretty simple. We'll maybe talk about that if anybody wants some more details at the end.
Yeah, thanks for that, Garry. For a demo on how to deploy and show off some I/O connections, I would like to invite you to our virtual booth. We can give you a demo on that and show you on how to deploy and go a little bit more in more depth than we can do in this 30-minute session. So yeah, I think for today, as we have seen, to create a great GUI design, everybody in the process needs to do what they do best. Since user experience is key, change is inevitable. try to facilitate it as efficient as possible, and you will see it will lead to an even better final product. We would love you to try this way of development for yourself and see how this helps you and your team. If you want more information, please join us in our virtual booths, and we can have a bit more in-depth discussion.
Awesome. So I think Storyboard is available for free to try. So this is a free trial. So you can see the link on the screen there. I'd encourage you to go and download it, give it a try. So everything that I've shown you today is entirely possible in the evaluation version. It's just time limited. Okay, shall we perhaps go to some questions? If you have any from the audience?
Did we receive any questions?
Yeah, we did receive a couple of questions. The first question in the chat box is it confirmed, Garry, can you confirm that you do not need to write any code in Storyboard?
That's correct, really. So as I showed you, there is scope for writing what we call Lua scripts. So Lua is the language I use, but that's really very simple script to maybe do basic combination logic, maybe if then else type behaviors. The rest of it is done with the user interface kind of description. So you can create animations, you can change and flip values between one state and another. You can move things around on the screen, all without writing code. So that's really how we try and encourage the designers to make use of the Storyboard tool as well as the software engineers. So they can do much more of this task. I'm sure if there's lots of software guys on the call, then those guys have got much more to do in the back end space. So this is the actual machine control. So they don't need to spend as much time doing any of the the pixel moving on the front end. So you can write a bit of script, but you often that's limited to just a few functions.
Okay, thank you. Then another one is a very good question. What types of microprocessors or microcontrollers can you use the Crank software?
Shall I tell it, Gilles?
Yeah, feel free to elaborate on this.
Awesome. So Storyboard is a scalable tool. I mentioned that the scenario one, which is very common in many of our customers, is they have this entry-level, mid-range, high-end kind of product span. And on the entry level, they may be using a microcontroller, something like an STM32 or an NXP IMEX RT type device. These are a Cortex M33, M4, M7 core, and with or without graphics acceleration. So that's very much kind of the MCU target. You use the same tool, Storyboard, to create the designs in the same way for MCUs as you would for something maybe higher power like a Cortex A series, some application processor. So that might be running Linux on the application side, and an RTOS such as FreeRTOS or or ThreadX or something on the lower end. So the way that you develop is the same. The way that you create your UI, you can use all the same tools in Storyboard. The way you deploy them is slightly different. On an MCU, we'll be deploying as a kind of resource header file. On an MPU on a high-end device, we're in Linux, we're deploying as a file or set of files, because they have a file system where you typically don't on an MCU. So pretty much any MCU or MPU we can run on with or without hardware acceleration. We're pretty much agnostic to platform. So the same runtimes are available for NXP devices, ST devices, microchip devices, pretty much anything. So hope that answers your question.
Okay. Then maybe one final question. I don't know if that's an easy one. How about integration into continuous integration tools with like unit tests from end to end? I guess that's a little bit different because you have a front end and a back end. So I guess the back end is meant here.
Yeah, well, it does apply to the front end as well. So often you need to kind of do code coverage on the state machine, but also UI coverage in terms of the the testing path. So we have using our Storyboard.io, you can inject user input events from external to the application, so you can drive that. And we've got many customers doing that using unit testing frameworks. We don't provide one because every customer typically has got a different approach, but we provide you the tools to do it. So we have something called a Lua, a command line interpreter. So this is a separate process. You can inject events using a Lua language script. We've got some prototype code with which wraps our Storyboard.io API in Python. So it allows you to use Python-based scripts. So there's several Python-based testing frameworks which you can use, and we've got a few customers doing that as well. But yeah, it's the ability to test it on a desktop environment with isolation from the target and simulate those events we saw going backwards and forwards is also a big benefit. So we've got a tool inside of Storyboard itself called the IO connector, which allows you to do that. So we've got lots of tools, we've got lots of facilities. It's really up to you to see which one works best for your environment.
All right, Garry, thanks for that. Good question. Yeah, for now, I want to inform you that tomorrow we have our final roundtable talk where we discuss the use case of Rombit and how they managed to get a product from concept to launch in only 3 months. And yeah, for now, I want to thank everyone for joining. Have a great day and please stay safe. Thanks.
Thank you all.